The Homophobic Culture of Jamaica and the Caribbean. This paper is intended to carefully evaluate the homophobic nature of the Caribbean region. This paper seeks to discover whether or not the members of the Caribbean regions are liberal or conventional thinkers. The writer intends to assess whether or not one's choice of sexuality is a human or civil right, and how important is human and civil rights in maintaining education and maintaining cultural norms and customs. The Caribbean region is largely considered as a region of conventional thinkers. Most if not all Caribbean societies' approach to varied situations rest primarily on the ideological principles set by our forefathers, their ancestors. The world itself, those who holds power, is primarily liberals. The liberals could be considered as reformers of societal norms and values. Liberals are easily swayed to reformed valued norms and mores of a society. We live in a global village. This fact makes it difficult to ignore the changing stance taken against many basic fundamental principles. The inclusion and acceptance of gays within many areas of the international community is just one social anomaly which has many policymakers throughout the Caribbean region being pressured to become liberal thinkers. The idea of changing valued societal norms and mores by any policymaker are considered as political suicide by many political analysts throughout the Caribbean region. The uniqueness of the Caribbean's conventional norms and mores creates a challenge to many Charter of Rights positions held by Caribbean countries. In reality, the rights of each citizen exist under conditions and are monitored rigorously by the common man on the street. Norms and mores are measured before rights and responsibility of a citizen. What is the Jamaican reality? The British landed in Jamaica in 1655. Burton, 1985. The British brought with them their norms. These norms included mores, value system and belief. A few years after the arrival of the British came the introduction of the triangular slave trade. This trade introduced slaves from Africa. The slaves brought with them cultural traditions and norms accepted within many African societies. During slavery, the tradition of the British was infused with practices of our African ancestors. The birth of the Jamaican culture was evident by 1838. Jamaica now had a clearly defined culture. The laws of the land were based on the philosophical and ideological perspective of those who now lived within this society. The Constitution of Jamaica was framed along the conventional views of the populace. Prior to independence in 1962, Jamaica copied and implemented the universal accepted British constitutional laws. Up until the 1960s, Britain was mostly conventional in thinking. The inclusion of liberal ideas within the belief system of Britain became popular with the liberalization of rights throughout countries such as the United States and other European countries. With a universal change in the world's developed countries' norms and value system, came the desire to establish a universal rights system. Within this system or philosophy was the call for the acceptance of everyone. This acceptance included the acceptance of everyone regardless of race, creed, and gender and sexuality, heterosexual and homosexual, for everyone. The universal acceptance of homosexuals goes against the norms of Jamaica and the wider Caribbean society's conventional way of thinking. Jamaica's cultural traditions still reflect a conventional view. The acceptance of everyone regardless of their sexuality goes against the socialization of the typical Jamaican citizen. Surprisingly, many Caribbean countries have made changes to their constitutional laws which guards the rights of every citizen regardless of their sexuality. What are norms and how does this affect the normal citizen? According to Haralambos et al., 2008, norms are accepted behavior of a society. Norms are sometimes written rules. These rules are referred to as laws. Laws are policies set by our policy makers, the House of Representatives. Norms can be unwritten rules. These rules are usually referred to as folkways, mores and customs. The framework of Jamaica's laws are entrenched within conventional or traditional philosophies and ideologies. Many laws which governs Jamaica's are guided by the sociological traditional transferred throughout several generations, inherent culture. Many Jamaicans refuse to accept the reality that the world has moved away from the once conventional argument which suggests that tradition is sometimes wrong. This liberal way of thinking has influenced many new laws being passed by the United Nations Committee on Human Rights. It is important that we recognize that our societal socialized norms guarantee our position as citizens. Where we break these norms we are considered as deviant and are chastised for our actions. As citizens we are entrusted with the responsibility of maintaining our country's laws, which are all shadows of our society's norms. Every citizen has fundamental rights. These rights are divided between human rights and civil rights. Throughout the world there are fundamental human rights in which everyone living throughout the world is guaranteed. The right life, liberty and choice are the basic human rights of every human on planet Earth. Civil rights are personal rights guaranteed and protected by the law of any country. The breaking of these laws warrants action by the judiciary arm of government for legal action. Civil rights may include a. freedom of speech, b. the right to vote, c. due process of law, d. equal protection of the laws. Civil rights are rights given to every citizen within a country governed internally by law. Civil rights are different from human rights or natural rights, also sometimes called our God-given rights. Homosexuals over the past decade have tried earnestly to make their sexual orientation protected under the laws of human rights. Many Caribbean countries like Jamaica consider homosexuality as a proposed civil right. Civil rights are monitored and charted by individual countries. External interventions are never usually considered. It is believed that homosexuality is a social movement, not an inherent right. McAdam, 1999, and McAdam, 1988. This is a stance being held by Jamaica regardless of mounting external pressure for the acceptance of homosexuals and according them civil rights as accorded to the other members of the Jamaican society. The acceptance of homosexuality throughout the Jamaican and other Caribbean societies is not a norm and value held by Jamaicans. What is the difference between norms and values? Unlike norms, values provide specific codes of conduct. A value is a belief that something is good and desirable. Harold Ambisettle 2000. In our Jamaican culture, we have a saying that, belief kills and belief cures. A belief is what we know to be true and is strongly adhered to. Beliefs are usually transcended from one generation to another. The process by which occurs is referred to as socialization. It is important for us to recognize that socialization begins within the home. The family socializes the newborn member of the home. The accepted culture, norms and beliefs are shared. The family embraces the socialized way of life accepted by family, community and the general society. Norms are sometimes approved by the policy makers and transformed into laws. Today, within this 21st century, one should be very careful when assessing the value being placed on norms, beliefs and culture held by our society. The Jamaican society has gradually become liberal over the past decade. The importance of morals set by our society and the role religion plays in the maintenance of these morals are gradually being eroded. It is a fact that our norms, values and beliefs influence our daily actions. Many values are still held with higher regards than throughout the Caribbean and Jamaica, although universally they are considered as violations of human rights. Talcott Parsons, 1970, in his theory Social Action considers norms and values as ideas held by the society. When carefully synthesized, the social action theory included primarily views of positivism and idealism. Parsons, 1970, set out to formulate a general action theory that would be based on voluntarism and would consider the causal relevance of cultural phenomena such as ideas, norms, and goals. In addition, his action theory considers how higher-order systems would emerge from lower-order systems, and how these emergent systems incorporated their component elements. Based on the underlined principled approach of Parsons' theory, inequality is necessary so as to facilitate social order. Surprisingly, this ideology seems logical. It is believed that the argument put forward by Parsons supports a balance within society. Everyone cannot be allowed to do as they please. A hierarchical framework of social order is necessary so as to maintain a civil society. Regardless of this stance, it is believed that the masses of a populace should have a voice in how the social order of a country is managed. It is based on this premise, populace contribution, The stance against homosexuality becoming legalized in all Caribbean states and Jamaica and be allowed rights as the general populace is not encouraged by civil society and policy makers. Importantly, one should recognize that values can be seen by looking at how social actors view ends and means within the context of value. Every social action has a means within itself. In Jamaica today, the aid granted to the government are made by several multilateral agencies throughout the developed world are being streamlined against whether or not Jamaican policymakers reconsiders making homosexuality legal and cautioning the citizens of Jamaica against higher-rate homophobia. This stance being made by multilaterals and developing countries serves as a means of twisting of the arms of our region's legislature to accept liberal views on human sexuality. Jamaican policymakers are now being urged to denounce the homophobic stance held within our culture for years. This has resulted in the rethinking and the reframing of how human sexuality is viewed and align the issue of homosexuality along the lines of human and civil rights. The fear of the acceptance of homosexuals is regarded by most social scientists and psychologists as homophobia. Many social scientists would refer to Jamaicans' homophobia as being hypocritical. Homophobia is regarded as a form of prejudice. The history books will describe the crude reality of slavery and the extensive instances of prejudice of the black slaves during slavery and even today within many societies. Many social activists will argue that just like the struggle of the black race to gain equality within every civilized society, so too homosexuals express the same desire to attain the same. Many social activists express with dismay with the fact that in an age when racial and ethnic name-calling is viewed with distaste and physical epithets are frowned upon, hatred of homosexuals remains rife. Ironically, there are similarities between fight against slavery and the fight for gay rights. The underlined focus is the extension of human rights to all human beings, heterosexuals and homosexuals. Jamaican policymakers however consider their stance on homosexuality as a civil situation, not a human right. Regardless of the justifiable comparison made between slavery and homosexuality with regards to human rights, the reality of acceptance of homosexuality as the norm in Jamaican civil society faces a legal, social and religious opposition. Legally, it is against the law to engage in sexual activities with persons of the same sex. The buggering law still exists in Jamaica. This law has been on the law books for years and has been encouraged by religious personnel throughout our society during the early years of independence even until today. We learn in social studies that one of the family's main functions is to socialize their young about the accepted norms, beliefs, and values. Ranzawak 2005. The rejection of homosexuality within the typical Jamaican family is normal ideological stance taken. This is understandable, based on the height of our nation religious stance, having the most church per square mile throughout the world and the belief of the Bible and its laws and regulations coupled with several historical beliefs regarding the practice of homosexuality. Aided with a religion and the backing of socialized mass of a country, it is easy to conclude that homophobia in Jamaica will take a while to eliminate. Regardless of the pressure from developed countries and international organizations such as the United Nations, prohibitions of gay rights still exist. It is considered as political suicide if a political party in Jamaica engages the gay community publicly in an effort to legalize their sexual practices. During the past 4 years there has been mounting pressure on the government of Jamaica to revisit the buggering legislation/law. Ironically, the laws against homosexuality were first introduced by the British when they organized the government system in Jamaica, during their tenure as Jamaica's government. As explained earlier, the liberalization of British government system has led to the repealing of this law during the first half of the 20th century. Today Jamaicans refuses to accept this change in ideology. Today both the British and the United States government are clamoring for countries such as Jamaica to repeal the buggering law. In Jamaica, there are many impeding factors which prevents the readily acceptance of homosexuality within the general society. Indeed, some may view Jamaican laws as laws for heterosexuals only. Many will argue it is the rights of every citizen to enjoy the benefits of citizenry, However, one may argue that the acceptance of gay rights will encourage every minority group to legalize their cause. A clear example is, having animal rights activists legalizing their cause making it illegal to kill animals. That argument brings a total new twist to this story of rights and responsibilities. Biblically, the Bible speaks against the act of homosexuality. Religiously, homosexuality is a forbidden act. The religious support which exists in Jamaica prevents or limits the zeal to rethink homosexuality as legal. Biologically, it is impossible according to nature, for persons of the same sex to give birth to young ones. Homosexuals cannot reproduce. They depend on heterosexuals for survival. Does this mean homosexuals are not citizens? Ramzawak et al., 2005, describes a citizen as a native or naturalized member of a country. According to the law of Jamaica, every citizen is entitled to several rights. Citizens are further empowered with equal rights being given to all regardless of color, creed or social status. Every citizen is entitled to protection from the elected government officials of the country. Every country has uniquely enshrined within their constitution the rights of each citizen. Some rights may vary according to the views of the masses. It would be justified to say that a country's human rights policies are the foundation which determines the civil rights of the populace. In Jamaica, homosexuals do not have any fundamental rights when compared to other countries. The laws of the land do not extend their civil rights to homosexuals. This premise is based on our conventional way of thinking. Homosexuality is contempt of human nature based on religious principles. As citizens of Jamaica, we are given rights. We are expected to ensure that we do not trample on our neighbor's rights. With these rights come responsibilities. We are expected to respect our neighbor's rights. We are expected to follow the principled guidelines set out by our Constitution and the bodies of civil duties entrusted upon us, once we become active citizens within our country. It is the duty of educators throughout different grade levels to inspire their pupils to become aware of their rights and responsibilities within their society. It is these rights and responsibilities along with enshrined constitutional laws and socialized practice which shapes our mind into a nationalist or patriot. The idea of infusing citizenship within the curriculum is not a new school of thought. The concept of creating a well-defined structure which helps to disseminate solid views on citizenship, however, will serve well in our country, which has been re-socializing itself into the Western country of North America, especially the United States of America, through the Internet and the popular cable television system. The rules which govern the Jamaican society are now being measured against those of liberal societies. Many Jamaicans have become liberal in their thinking as a result of their exposure to the liberal way of life. We are expected to change our conventional norms, beliefs, values and laws in order to appease liberal societies. In 1962, Jamaica made a big step. This step was to break free of external influence fully. We took the chance to be a nation of thinkers who would chant our own destination and principles. We were expected to be a nation with a self-proclaimed mission, that of which was to be economically viable and socially respected. We had no part to play in the development of any country now considered as liberal laws and norms. Should we then be bothered to yield to the position taken against us that we should reform our social thinking on the issue of homosexuality? Today there is a still small voice protests against the typical Jamaican's view against homosexuals being deemed as villains and an abomination. Many liberals would argue that the aggression being met by homosexuals are contemptuous and need reviews by the governing authorities. Another conventional thinker would point to the fact that it is these highly held norms of the Jamaican society are based on religious beliefs, and to force one to go against such deny each Jamaican citizen the right to choose adopt religious views. Citizenship education not only socializes our pupils on their rights and responsibilities but allows each pupil to develop the respect needed to encourage students to be patriots and nationalists. To say there is no relationship between human rights and civil rights would be disingenuous. However, it is believed that each country should have the right to accept or reject civil rights laws expressed by external authorities. Jamaica is a homophobic society encouraged by our socialized religious stance. To force Jamaicans to forego this socialized reasoning would suggest that we as Jamaicans should rationalize our religious perspective, reforming them so as to favor the liberals. Citizenship education is about enabling people to make their own decisions and to take responsibility for their own lives and their communities. Citizenship education reinforces the principles of social relationships which exist within a country. Homosexuality is not a social relationship held in high regards within our Jamaican society. It is believed that fundamental human rights are not denied. Should the Caribbean region including Jamaica become a region of liberal thinkers, and agree with the idea of homosexuals being equal in rights as heterosexuals?